In the quiet lakeside town of Norton Shores, Michigan, nestled along the eastern edge of Lake Michigan, a dark and haunting story unraveled in the summer of 2022. It was the kind of tragedy that chills the soul and prompts a community and a nation to ask, how could something like this happen? At the heart of this devastating story was a 15-year-old boy named Timothy Ferguson. Thin to the point of emaciation, isolated from the world, and tormented within the walls of what should have been his sanctuary, Timothy's death sent shockwaves through his neighborhood and far beyond. This is a story not just of abuse and neglect, but of systemic failure, missed opportunities, and a descent into unthinkable cruelty at the hands of the people who should have protected him, his own family. Today, we delve deep into the life and death of Timothy Ferguson, a case of starvation, isolation, and unimaginable abuse. If you are drawn to investigative true crime stories that shine a light on the darkest corners of human behavior, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue telling the stories that matter. Timothy Ferguson was born in 2007, the youngest child of Shanda Vander Ark. From the beginning, life was complicated. Timothy was diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and other cognitive and emotional developmental disorders. These diagnoses meant that Timothy required specialized attention, a stable home, and professional care. Instead, what he received was the opposite. Neighbors and extended family members would later recall that Timothy seemed distant, often kept inside, and rarely seen playing or socializing like other children. His older brother, Paul Ferguson, was a more visible presence in the neighborhood, but even he was described as standoffish and odd. Shanda, the children's mother, was a complex figure. Some described her as overwhelmed and isolated. Others would later testify in court that she exhibited controlling and punitive behaviors, especially toward Timothy. There was no father figure present in Timothy's life by the time he reached adolescence, and the household became increasingly reclusive. When Timothy was pulled out of public school for homeschooling, the system lost one of its few ways of monitoring his well-being. For a child with special needs, this was a particularly dangerous turning point. On July 6, 2022, at approximately 6:37 a.m., emergency services responded to a distressing 911 call from Shanda Vander Ark. She reported that her son, Timothy, was unresponsive in their basement. Upon arrival, first responders found Timothy's lifeless body, emaciated and showing signs of prolonged neglect. The scene was grim: a cluttered basement, a makeshift sleeping area, and evidence suggesting that Timothy had been confined and deprived of basic necessities. As investigators delved deeper, a disturbing pattern of abuse emerged. Timothy had been subjected to inhumane conditions inside the modest home in Norton Shores. Timothy Ferguson was subjected to relentless and escalating abuse by his mother, Shanda Vander Ark, and his 21-year-old brother, Paul Ferguson. They claimed Timothy was possessed by a demon, using this belief to justify a series of cruel punishments that amounted to systematic torture. Timothy, who was autistic and had speech and motor impairments, he was isolated from the outside world. Shanda abruptly withdrew Timothy from public school. He was homeschooled and cut off from any potential sources of help. His daily life became a cycle of suffering, with punishments that included forced ice baths. Timothy was subjected to prolonged ice baths, sometimes lasting up to 9 hours. On the day of his death, he was left in freezing water for several hours, leading to hypothermia. Starvation and food deprivation. The refrigerator and food cabinets were locked to prevent Timothy from accessing food. He was often denied meals and forced to eat items like hot sauce-soaked brea. Timothy was regularly handcuffed and shackled, restricting his movement and causing physical pain. Sleep deprivation. He was deprived of sleep, further weakening his physical and mental state. Isolation. Timothy was forced to sleep in a small closet, often in a fetal position, and was monitored by cameras installed by his mother. The abuse was meticulously documented by Shanda, who even suggested more extreme punishments in text messages to Paul, including dripping hot sauce on Timothy's private parts. On July 6, 2022, after enduring months of torture, Timothy died from malnourishment and hypothermia. He weighed only 69 pounds at the time of his death. If you find value in in-depth true crime investigations like this, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support enables us to continue shedding light on stories that matter. The gravity of the case led to swift legal action. Shanda Vander Ark was charged with first-degree murder and child abuse. Her son, Paul Ferguson, faced charges of first-degree child abuse. During the trial, the prosecution presented compelling evidence of the systematic torture Timothy endured. The defense argued that Shanda was overwhelmed and lacked the resources to care for her son. However, the jury found her guilty, leading to a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Paul Ferguson received a sentence of 30 to 100 years in prison. Timothy's tragic death sparked a nationwide conversation about child welfare and the responsibilities of caregivers. Advocacy groups called for reforms in monitoring homeschooling environments and ensuring that children with special needs receive appropriate support. The case highlighted the importance of community vigilance and the need for systemic changes to prevent similar tragedies. Timothy Ferguson's story is a somber reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by children with special needs and the dire consequences of systemic neglect. As we remember Timothy, let us commit to advocating for the voiceless and ensuring that such a tragedy never occurs again. Thank you for watching and honoring the memory of Timothy Ferguson. We tell these stories not to sensationalize, but to ensure they are never forgotten, and to push for the change that prevents another child from suffering in silence. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. It's a small action that can support a much larger cause. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and always look out for the most vulnerable among us.